Thanks for joining me for another quick midweek lesson. This time I want to take you through what I refer to as my jazz survival guide. Essentially a no BS list of all the essential jazz chord shapes you need to get started. Of course, it also means that if you're a subscriber here and you see a lot of my lessons, we'll all be singing from the same hymn sheet, so to speak. So we're just going to whiz through all of our essential 3-note chord voicings, and then we'll move on to our bigger chord voicings, the drop 2s and the drop 3s and the like. We're going to break all of these down into two distinct categories, ones that are rooted on the E string and ones that are rooted on the A string. We'll do all of these with a C root, and we're going to start on the low E string. Let's take a C major 7 3-note voicing. 1, 7, 3. Now we're going to see what happens if we flatten the note on the D string and make it a flat 7. C7, or C dominant 7 to give it the full name. Let's flatten that same string again down to a 6. Now you've got a C6, or a C major 6. For this one I recommend shuffling the fingers round. Now let's reset and go back to the C major 7. But let's flatten the note on the G string this time, making the third a minor third, and thus making this a minor chord. Pretty spicy. 1, 7, flat 3. That's a C minor major 7th. The major 7th is this note here on the D string. Let's flatten that D string now. C minor 7. 1, flat 7, flat 3. Let's flatten that D string again. C minor 6, beautiful sounding chord. 1, 6, flat 3. So those are your essential 3-note voicings off the low E string. It's also worth mentioning that a couple of these can do double duty as other chords as well. For example, C minor 7. Because there's no fifth in this, this could also function as C minor 7 flat 5. And the same thing with the C minor 6. Because there's no fifth in here, we haven't added the B string, this could also be C diminished. Okay, now let's move on to the A string. So again, we're rooting this in C. 1, 3, 7. That's your C major 7 3-note voicing off the A string. Just like before, let's flatten the string that has the 7 on it. C dominant 7, or just C7 for short. That's 1, 3, flat 7. Let's flatten that flat 7 again to make it a 6. There's C6, or C major 6. Okay, so now you've got this. Now just like before, let's reset and go back to the major 7th for a moment. Now let's flatten the third to make it a minor third. C minor major 7, it's that spicy sounding one again. 1, flat 3, 7. Now we're going to keep the root and the minor third, but we're going to flatten the G string to make it a flat 7. Now you've got C minor 7. Flatten the flat 7, and you've got C minor 6. Okay, now let's go and explore our more full sounding voicings, and again we'll start with the low E string. These voicings are often referred to as drop 3 voicings. This is just a quick lesson, so we won't go into depth on that, but it's been covered by plenty of great teachers out there. Jens Larsen and Adam Levy come to mind, so do check those guys out. Look at their videos on drop 3 and drop 2 voicings to explain where those names come from. Okay, so the first one, just like our 3-note voicing to start with, C major 7, but now we're adding the B string, 8th fret. We're adding the 5th into the chord. Okay, now let's flatten the note on the D string, so that's the 7, going to become a flat 7. C7. With this one, you've got two options fingering-wise. You can use all your fingers or you can hook your thumb over. You'll need both, so practice both. Now let's flatten the note on the G string, so that's your major third, it's going to become a minor third, but we're going to retain everything else that we had. Now you've got root, flat 7, flat 3 and 5, that's C minor 7. Now flatten the 5, keep all those other notes that we had from the C minor 7, and what have we got? We've got C minor 7, flat 5. Now flatten the note on the D string next, C diminished 7. So notice how all the way through that process we only changed one note at a time, and we got all of those essential 7th chords. Just to summarize, C major 7, C dominant 7, C minor 7, C minor 7 flat 5, C diminished 7. Now just before we move down to the A string position, make sure you've observed the fact that none of those voicings had the A string involved. We skipped that string every time, it was totally dead. Now we're moving down to the A string, the voicings are totally different. There's no skipped string, everything's in a stack. These are referred to as drop 2 voicings. Again, check out Jens Larsen or Adam Levy to see a really good thorough description of what these things are all about. So I'm just going to take you through the 7th chords starting from this position. So C major 7. We don't need the top E or the low E, although sometimes you might want to bar the top E. We're not going to bother with these particular ones. Root 5th 7 3. Now let's take the same process as before. Let's flatten the 7 first. Now we have C7 or C dominant 7. Now let's flatten the 3rd. C minor 7. Now let's flatten the 5th. Have to rejig the fingers for that. C minor 7 flat 5. Now let's flatten the flat 7. C diminished 7. So just to recap, C major 7. C dominant 7, C minor 7, C minor 7 flat 5, C diminished 7. Now let's cover a couple of miscellaneous voicings that don't quite fit into that system of drop 2 or drop 3. Take a C major chord in open position. Ignore the 2 E strings altogether. Let's make that a C7 by adding the little finger, the flat 7. That is more commonly used if you're a rhythm player than this one. So if you're voicing your C7 off the A string, I would recommend that one, what we refer to as the C shape, if you're thinking of the caged system. Now commonly, if you're in search of a C6, you would do the same thing. Take that flat 7 and flatten it again. Now you've got a C6 voicing. I always used to think of this as a chord that looks like A minor, and then you're just adding the little finger on. With those kinds of voicings, it's important to kind of wrap your hand around the guitar and hold it like a baseball bat so that you can mute the low E and the high E. Same with that C7. Okay, now for the final voicings, let's go back to the low E string. Let's find our 6ths. C major 6. Root 6, 3, 5. And C minor 6. Flattening that 3rd down. With this one you've got the option again of barring or using 2 separate fingers. Also sometimes you'll bring in the top E string, so the barring is a good approach. Now it's also worth including those voicings off the A string. There's your 3-note C minor 6, and then there's the 5th on top. Now taking that foundation and moving it to the A string, that's also a really useful way to play C minor 6, and you can add the 5th on top if you want. Okay, so there we go. Those are what I would refer to as the most essential jazz chord voicings. If you get a good firm grip on all of those, you'll be able to play your way through any standard. Obviously over time you want to add more. You can add D string rooted equivalents, and you can find all your inversions. All of that stuff is really important for playing jazz, but as an entryway, this is a great starting point. Check out the links in the description if you want to get hold of my jazz survival guide, plus all the materials from my other lessons. You get unlimited access to all of that if you join my Patreon. If Patreon isn't your thing, you can go to the Gumroad link instead, where you can make a one-off purchase for these lesson materials. These will be provided in Guitar Pro and PDF formats, in tab and notation with chord grids and finger numbers. Again, if you can learn these shapes and really get them under your fingers, we'll be on a level playing field, and all the videos going forwards are going to make a lot more sense and you'll take to them very easily. Okay, thanks for watching. See you next time.